Part 1. I don't usually remember my dreams. Most nights I close my eyes and wake up to the blurry echo of something I can't quite hold on to, a flicker of color, a whisper fading before I can catch it. But 3 nights ago, everything changed. I saw something. No, I read something. A message. It was buried in the middle of a strange, vivid dream that felt too real to be a product of my mind. And what it said, wake up before 3:33, or it'll find you. I sat bolt upright in bed, heart hammering like I'd been jolted by a defibrillator. My room was cold, unnaturally cold, and silent. I reached for my phone. The screen lit up. 3:32 a.m. My breath caught. I stared at the glowing digits, as if time itself might turn to look back at me. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence. A random fragment my brain stitched together while I slept, but then the hallway light flickered, and I knew I hadn't imagined it. That night, I didn't sleep again. I watched the clock tick past 3:33. Nothing happened. No footsteps. No knocking. No shadows creeping under the door. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been close, watching, maybe even waiting. The next night, I stayed up past midnight, too afraid to sleep. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under, and the dream returned. This time, I was walking through a vast, empty library. The books stretched so high, I couldn't see the ceiling. A low hum filled the air like distant chanting. I wandered the aisles, fingers brushing over faded spines. Then I saw it, a single red book sitting open on a pedestal. Its pages were blank, until I blinked. Then, ink bled through the page, forming the words, second warning. Don't forget what you saw. The ink began to drip, pooling like blood on the marble floor. I woke gasping, drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:33 a.m. again. I had no memory of waking before then. The next day, everything felt off. My reflection in the mirror seemed slightly delayed. My phone screen flickered when I tried to open my camera. And I swear I heard someone whisper my name when I walked past the hallway mirror. I went online, desperate to find anything similar. Dream messages, warnings, 3:33 a.m. There were stories, urban legends, mostly. People claimed that time was when the veil was thinnest. Whatever that meant. That dreams weren't just dreams, and something used that hour to communicate, or cross over. But the thing that disturbed me most was a forum post buried deep in a forgotten thread. If you dream of writing, you're being written into. If you read a message, it was never yours to begin with. That night, I tried to stay awake. I failed. The dream came faster this time. No build-up, no wandering, just darkness, and a voice, low, gravelly, like it scraped the edges of something that shouldn't exist. You were warned. I tried to speak, but my mouth didn't move. Tried to run, but I had no legs, only eyes, watching. The void shifted, and suddenly I was staring at my bedroom from the ceiling. Not in the dream. Through it, I saw myself sleeping. And I wasn't alone. Something stood beside my bed, tall, thin, with arms that reached too far and a face that was just wrong. Its head turned toward the ceiling, toward me, and it smiled. I jolted awake with a scream caught in my throat. My body refused to move for several seconds, paralyzed, locked in that terrible state between waking and sleep. I could feel something in the room with me, breathing, clothes. When my limbs finally responded, I rolled out of bed and turned on every light in the apartment. I didn't care that it was nearly 4 a.m. Sleep was no longer an option. I tried writing down everything I could remember, the words, the shape of the creature, the dream structure, and that's when I saw it. Buried in my notes, between scribbles and barely legible phrases, was something I hadn't written, a sentence neatly printed, with punctuation I never used. You're not dreaming. You're remembering. I dropped the notebook and backed away. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was contact, and I hadn't reached out first. The following day, things escalated. I started noticing changes in my apartment. Small at first. My toothbrush would be in the wrong place. The time on my oven was always flashing 3:33, no matter how many times I reset it. My cat, normally calm, began hissing at the bathroom mirror. Then the dreams began spilling over. I would blink during the day and find myself back in the library, hear whispers in my headphones that didn't match the audio. I even found a small slip of paper in my coat pocket written in that same red ink. Keep ignoring me. I dare you. That night, I didn't fall asleep naturally. I was pulled. The darkness wasn't passive anymore. It reached for me, dragged me back. This time, I was standing in a long hallway lined with doors. Each one throbbed like a heartbeat, pulsing softly in the dim red light. I walked, hesitant, until one door opened by itself. Inside, I saw a version of myself I didn't recognize. Sitting motionless in chair, eyes sewn shut, lips stitched into a grotesque smile. The figure turned its head toward me. Despite the lack of vision, you came back too late. The walls began to close in. The whispering returned, louder, desperate, angry. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And I did, but I wasn't in my bed. I was sitting upright in the middle of my kitchen, notebook in my lap, a fresh message scrawled across the page. The door's open now. You let it in. I stared at the front door. It was ajar. I didn't sleep again that night. And I knew, whatever was inside those dreams, it found its way out. Part 2. I didn't leave my apartment for 2 days. Every creak in the floorboards, every flicker of the lights, every shadow that moved just a little too slowly made my skin crawl. I kept all the windows locked and the blinds drawn, but that didn't help the feeling that something was already inside. It wasn't paranoia. It was awareness. Something had come through. The front door had been open, not broken, not forced, just unlocked. But I always locked it. Always. I double-checked it every night. That night, though, it was like I had invited something in without even knowing. And the notebook wouldn't stop. More writing appeared, always in that red ink, always in that same tidy script. I never caught it appearing in real time, but every time I turned a page or left a room, there'd be something new. That morning, the message was simple. It's learning to stay longer. I snapped the notebook shut and shoved it into the bottom drawer of my desk. But even then, I could feel it, like an itch inside my skull, a hum just beneath the skin of the world. By the third day, I noticed something strange on my phone. My call log had changed. There were outgoing calls to numbers I didn't recognize. And one stood out, my own number. There were 3 calls, all made between 3:30 and 3:33 a.m. I never made them. When I hit details, the phone glitched. The screen flickered violently, then returned to normal as if nothing had happened. But in that split second, I saw something reflected in the black glare of the screen. A face, not mine, pale, eyeless, grinning. I dropped the phone. The screen cracked on the tile, but it still worked. The call log had vanished, and in its place was a single new voicemail. The timestamp was 3:33 a.m. I hesitated before pressing play. My thumb hovered over the screen, heart pounding. A part of me screamed not to listen, but curiosity, or maybe fear, won. The message began with static, then a whisper. It was my own voice. You open the door. You can't close it. Then came something else. Something I still can't describe without shivering. Breathing. Wet, guttural, like lungs filled with mud. And underneath it, faint but clear, was another whisper. Not my voice. Dream again. I need more of you. I deleted the message, but I knew it didn't matter. That night, I fell asleep in the living room with all the lights on. It didn't stop the dream. It never did. I was back in the hallway of doors. But now they were all open, and behind each was a version of me. Twisted, broken, different. One sobbed uncontrollably. Another screamed until her throat split open. One just stared at me with hollow sockets and a stitched smile. I tried to run. The hallway stretched, warped. No matter how fast I moved, I didn't get anywhere. Then, from behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. I turned, expecting the creature from before. But it was me. Myself, except this version was calm. Clean, smiling, too perfect. I stepped back. She stepped forward. We mirrored each other perfectly until I tried to speak, and her smile widened. You're in the wrong place. Before I could ask what she meant, she lunged. The hallway shattered like glass, and I fell through color, noise, and static, until I slammed into consciousness with a gasp. Back in my apartment, 3:33 a.m., and standing in the hallway, just at the edge of the living room light, was a shadow. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching. I stared at it, frozen in place, unable to scream or breathe, and slowly, it turned and walked toward the bathroom. I didn't move until the sun came up. I wasn't brave, just broken. I called my friend Anna later that day. I hadn't told anyone about what was happening, but I needed someone to come over, to make me feel like I wasn't losing my mind. When she arrived, I laughed nervously and brushed it off. Just bad dreams, you know? She nodded, but her eyes flicked toward the hallway. Did you paint something in there? She asked. No, why? There's something on the wall. I felt my blood run cold. We walked down the hallway together. The light bulb above us flickered, and the moment we turned the corner, I saw it. Symbols. Dozens of them, scrawled across the wall in black. Some looked like letters. Others were strange geometric shapes. Twisted circles, lines intersecting in impossible ways. And at the center of it all, in red, the dream wants out. Anna gasped and stepped back. What the hell is that? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because I didn't write it. And it hadn't been there that morning. Anna left shortly after, promising to call me later, but I could tell she was shaken. I stood in that hallway for hours, staring at the writing. It didn't look like paint. It looked burned into the wall. I tried scrubbing it, painting over it. Nothing worked. And then, as I was scrubbing with bleach, I heard it, a whisper, from behind the mirror in the hallway. My name, spoken in my voice. I turned and caught a glimpse of my reflection. It blinked a second too late. That night, I boarded up the mirror and locked myself in the bedroom. No lights this time. No TV. Just silence. I wanted to see what would happen. And I did. I dreamed again. But this time, I wasn't the one moving. I was lying in bed, paralyzed, watching through closed eyelids as something moved around the room. It rifled through my drawers, opened the closet, picked up my notebook, and then it crawled into bed beside me. I could feel the weight, the cold breath on my neck, the pressure of fingers brushing my spine. And then it whispered, "Now we're real." I woke up screaming. The notebook was on my chest, a fresh message written in crimson. Part 3. The notebook's message hung in the air like a dark promise. Part 3 begins. Are you ready? It wasn't just words, it was a challenge, a summons, an invitation I didn't want but couldn't refuse. That morning, I sat at my kitchen table, the notebook open before me, its pages blank except for that chilling line. My hands trembled as I reached out, but no new words appeared. Instead, a cold breeze swept through the room, though every window was shut tight. The lights flickered again, casting uneven shadows that seemed to dance just beyond my vision. I realized a nightmare was no longer confined to sleep. It was bleeding into my waking hours. The boundaries were dissolving, and whatever had come to the door was making itself at home. I tried to reach out for help, but who could I trust? I called Anna again, but she answered with a nervous laugh and said she was busy with work. I caught the faintest hesitation in her voice, as if she'd sensed something but didn't want to say it aloud. After I hung up, I found a message waiting on my phone from an unknown number. You should stop looking. The text sent a chill down my spine. My phone vibrated again. Another message. They don't like witnesses. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. Was this a joke? A cruel prank? But the words felt too real, too personal. Too much like the nightmare bleeding into reality. That night, I couldn't sleep. The air in my apartment felt thick, like the walls were closing in. I paced from room to room, clutching the notebook, waiting for something, anything to happen. At exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone lit up. A call from my own number. I didn't answer, but the phone kept ringing louder and louder like a siren in silence. When I finally picked it up, the line was dead. Then a whisper, barely audible, "Come find us." The call ended. I knew then this was no ordinary haunting. It was a game, a cruel puzzle designed to draw me deeper into whatever nightmare had begun. The dreams returned, more vivid and terrifying than before. Each night, I found myself wandering that endless hallway of doors, but now the doors whispered secrets and voices I couldn't quite understand. I tried to open one, but my hand passed through it like smoke. The walls were closing in tighter, pressing against me, suffocating me with every step. One door creaked open, revealing a dark room. Inside, I saw flickering images, glimpses of my past, memories twisted and warped. I watched helplessly as my reflection smiled back at me with eyes that weren't mine. It mouthed words I couldn't hear. Suddenly, the door slammed shut. I was trapped in darkness. Panic surged through me as I pounded on walls, screaming for release. Then, in the silence, a voice, soft, mocking, whispered from the shadows. "You opened the door. Now you belong to us." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the notebook clenched in my fists. The red ink had bled through the page, forming a new sentence. "Find the key before it finds you." Days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and creeping dread. I avoided mirrors, afraid my reflection might betray me. I stopped answering the phone. Even the shadows seemed to watch, waiting. I scoured the notebook for clues. The symbols on my wall started appearing in its margins, tiny scratches and marks that formed a pattern. I traced them with my finger, feeling a strange warmth beneath the paper. It was like the book itself was alive, pulsing with something ancient and malevolent. Then a breakthrough. Hidden within the symbols was a map, a rough sketch of my neighborhood, but distorted, with streets that didn't exist and landmarks that twisted into grotesque shapes. At the center was a single symbol, a key. I realized what I had to do. I had to find the physical key. But where? The dreams held the answer, if only I could decipher them. Each night, the hallway grew longer, the voices louder. I followed the whispers, the shadows, the flickering lights, deeper into the labyrinth of my mind. One night, I saw it, a small wooden box buried beneath the floorboard of my childhood home, a place I hadn't visited in years. Inside, the key awaited. The next morning, armed with nothing but determination and terror, I booked a trip back to my hometown. The journey was filled with unease. The world outside seemed muted, colors washed out, sounds distant. It was as if I had stepped into a different reality. When I arrived at the old house, it was abandoned, rotting, consumed by vines and neglect. The floorboards creaked underfoot as I searched for the box, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Underneath the faded carpet in the living room, I found it, a small, dust-covered wooden box with a symbol from my notebook carved into its lid. I hesitated, fingers trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside was a key, cold and heavy, wrapped in a faded piece of paper. Unfolding it, I saw a message scrawled in the same red ink. Unlock the door within. That night, back in my apartment, I held the key tightly and closed my eyes. The hallway was waiting. Part 4. The moment I turned the key in my hand, a chill spread through my veins, as if the metal was colder than ice, yet it burned my skin. I closed my eyes, willing myself to stay calm. The hallway from my dreams was there, as vivid and terrifying as ever, stretching endlessly in front of me. But this time, I noticed something new, a door unlike the others. It was made of blackened wood, scratched and worn, but unlike the others. It had a keyhole that perfectly matched the shape of the key I held. The whispering voices that had been teasing me for nights grew louder, urging me forward. My hand trembled as I reached for the keyhole. The hallway seemed to pulse, the walls contracting as if they were alive. With a shaky breath, I slid the key inside and turned it. A deep groan echoed through the corridor. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room that felt impossibly cold. The air was thick, almost suffocating, and the faint scent of decay lingered. I stepped inside. Inside was a mirror, cracked and filthy, framed by twisted branches that seemed to writhe in the dim light. I approached cautiously, heart hammering. As I looked into it, the reflection was not my own. The face staring back was pale and gaunt, eyes hollow and black as coal. It smiled, a slow, cruel smile that sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, the room darkened, and the branches around the mirror seemed to reach out like fingers, pulling me closer. I tried to step back, but the floor beneath me vanished. I was falling into mirror, into that empty, cold gaze. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer my apartment. I stood in an endless void, black as night, where the silence was absolute except for a distant, echoing voice, my own, calling out for help. The voice led me forward, through shadows that seemed to shift and twist, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The void was alive, a living nightmare, and I was trapped inside its heart. Suddenly, a figure appeared, a woman with long, tangled hair, her eyes glowing faintly red. She smiled, but it was a smile filled with sorrow. "You found the key," she said softly, her voice like the rustle of dead leaves. But finding it was only the beginning. I asked who she was, but she only shook her head. "Many have come before you," she said, "all drawn by the dreams, all lost." She reached out a hand, and I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if something was trying to claw its way out. I staggered back, clutching my heart. "You must remember," she whispered. "Remember what you hid. Remember why you locked the door." Memories flooded me, fragments of a past I had buried deep, a childhood trauma, a secret I tried to forget, a night of darkness and fear that had shaped everything that came after. The woman faded into shadow, but her words echoed. I wasn't just a victim of these dreams. I was connected, bound, part of the nightmare. The void began to collapse, walls closing in on me like the jaws of a beast. I ran, heart racing, desperate to escape. Then I woke up, back in my apartment, drenched in sweat. The key was still in my hand, cold and heavy. The notebook lay open on the table. On its pages was a new message, written in the same red ink. "Remember the truth or be consumed." I knew then that the nightmare wasn't just a dream. It was a warning and a test. And the door inside me was still locked. Part 5. The weight of the woman's words lingered long after I woke. "Remember what you hid. Remember why you locked the door." Those weren't just cryptic clues. They were demands. Demands to face something inside me I had spent years trying to forget. Days slipped by in a haze of restless nights and haunted thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, the endless hallway returned, with its doors whispering secrets I could barely grasp. Yet one truth kept echoing louder than the rest. I had to remember. I decided to confront my past. I dug through old boxes, photos, journals, anything that could piece together what I'd buried so deep. The memories I found were fragments, broken and shadowed, but one incident kept surfacing, the night my younger sister disappeared. I hadn't thought about it in years. She was just 7 when she vanished without a trace. The police called it an unsolved mystery, a cold case lost in time. My parents never spoke about it. They simply moved on. But I never did. That night was a blur of fear, screams, and desperate searches. I remember the fear, the guilt gnawing at me because I was supposed to be watching her. But more than that, I remembered something else, a feeling of something watching us in the shadows. Something malevolent. I found a faded diary in one of the boxes, belonging to my sister. Her childish scrawl detailed strange dreams she had. Dreams of a dark figure lurking outside her window, whispering her name. The last entry ended abruptly with the words, "I think he's coming." Chills ran down my spine. Could this be the key? Was this dark figure connected to the nightmare I was trapped in now? That night, I lay awake, clutching the diary. The room felt colder, the shadows thicker. Then, as if on cue, my phone vibrated with a message from the unknown number again. "She's waiting." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Was it my sister? Or something else? Something that had taken her? The dreams grew darker. This time, I was back in the hallway, but the doors were closing in fast. I tried to run, but the floor cracked beneath me, sending me tumbling into darkness. I landed in a room filled with mirrors, dozens of them, each reflecting different versions of myself, each twisted and broken. One reflection smiled maliciously, another wept silently, and yet another screamed in silent agony. In the center of the room stood a small box, the same one I found at my childhood home. It was open now, empty but for a note. To free the past, you must face a shadow. A voice whispered behind me, cold and cruel, "Are you ready to see what lurks within?" I turned slowly. The dark figure from my sister's diary stood there, shrouded in shadow, eyes burning red. "I am what you fear," it hissed. "The shadow of your guilt, your secrets, your pain. To move forward, you must face me." I wanted to run, but I knew this was inevitable. I reached out, hands shaking, to confront the shadow. Part 6. My hands trembled as I reached toward the shadowy figure. The air around me grew heavy, thick with a coldness that seeped into my bones. The red glow in its eyes pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and ominous. I wanted to scream, to run, but something held me in place, a strange mix of fear and resolve. As my fingers brushed the shadow's form, the world twisted. The mirrors shattered around me, shards of glass raining down like ice. Pain exploded in my chest, sharp and searing, and suddenly I was back, but not in the endless hallway or the mirror room. I found myself standing in my childhood bedroom. The wallpaper was faded, peeling at the edges, and a familiar scent of old paper and dust filled the air. Yet everything felt wrong, distorted. Shadows clung to the corners, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. On my desk lay the box, closed now but humming with energy. I opened it slowly, revealing a small, worn photograph of my sister and me. We were smiling, unaware of the darkness that would soon shatter our world. Tears blurred my vision as memories flooded in. The day she disappeared, the silence that followed, the questions I could never answer. Then a voice echoed through the room, soft and chilling. "You hid the truth," it said. "Why did you lie?" I looked up. The shadow stood in the doorway, more defined now. Its shape flickered between human and something monstrous, a reminder of the evil I had tried to bury. I didn't lie. I whispered. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. The shadow's eyes flared. Fear is a prison. Suddenly, the room twisted again. Walls melted into darkness, and I was falling once more, deeper into the nightmare. I landed in a vast, empty chamber, lit only by a single flickering candle. In the center was a chair, and strapped to it was my sister, pale and trembling but alive. "Help me," she whispered. I reached for her, but invisible chains held me back. The shadow appeared beside her, its voice a cruel hiss. "She's trapped because you refuse to see, because you hid the truth." "What truth?" I demanded. The shadow smiled, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "The night she vanished, you were there, not as a child, but as something else." Confusion and horror washed over me. I remembered flashes, not a scared little brother, but of something darker inside me, something I'd repressed. That night, I didn't just lose my sister. I lost myself. The candle flickered out, and the chamber plunged into darkness. I screamed, trapped between guilt and fear, the shadow's laughter ringing in my ears. Then a faint light appeared, the key glowing softly in the darkness. It was a chance, a way out. But to take it, I would have confronted everything. The hidden message in my dream, the secret buried deep, and the shadow that had haunted me for years. Part 7. The glowing key floated before me, pulsing with an eerie light that seemed to breathe with its own life. It was both a beacon and a warning, a symbol of hope tangled with danger. My mind raced. Taking the key meant facing everything I tried to bury, the past, the shadow, and the terrible truth that had been clawing at my soul. But standing still meant being consumed by the nightmare forever. I reached out, my fingers brushing the key's cold surface. The moment I grasped it, a surge of energy coursed through me, a rush of memories, emotions, and dark secrets. Suddenly, I was no longer in the chamber. I was back in the hallway, but it had changed. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing with shadows that whispered names. Names I recognized. Friends, family, strangers lost in the darkness. Their faces flickered in the dim light, silent witnesses to my torment. The doors I had feared were now open, revealing rooms filled with memories, some joyful, others horrifying. One door led to a childhood birthday party, where laughter masked the tension beneath. Another revealed the night my sister disappeared, replayed in agonizing detail. I walked through each door, reliving moments I had locked away, each step unraveling the threads of my buried past. In one room, I saw myself as a child, clutching a small, broken doll, a symbol of innocence shattered. Tears welled in my eyes. How had I forgotten so much? How had I let the shadow consume me? Then, the whispers grew louder, merging into a chant. Remember, accept, let go. I understood. To escape, I had to accept the truth, no matter how painful. I stopped before a door unlike the others. Ancient and cracked, adorned with strange symbols glowing faintly in the dark. With the key in hand, I unlocked it. The room beyond was empty save for a single mirror, larger and clearer than any before. I stepped forward and gazed into it. At first, my reflection was normal, but slowly, the image shifted. The face staring back was haunted, eyes filled with sorrow and anger. Then, the shadow appeared behind me in the mirror, its grin wide and cruel. But this time, I did not flinch. I remember, I said, voice steady, I accept. The shadow lunged forward, but instead of fear, I met it with understanding. I am not your prisoner, I whispered. The mirror cracked, shards of glass exploding outward. The hallway began to dissolve, the whispers fading into silence. I felt myself falling, but this time I landed in my own bed, morning light filtering through the curtains. The nightmare was over, or so I thought. My phone buzzed. A new message appeared. The message is only the beginning. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The nightmare wasn't finished with me yet. Part 8. The morning sun felt cold and distant as I stared at my phone screen. The words, the message is only the beginning, burning like a brand. My mind reeled, trying to piece together what had just happened. Was the nightmare truly over, or was it only evolving into something worse? I tried to shake the lingering dread, but the world around me began to shift subtly. Familiar sounds warped into unsettling echoes. The hum of the refrigerator twisted into a low, guttural growl. The walls seemed to breathe, shadows crawling like living things across the corners of my vision. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the hallway returned. But now it was different. The doors weren't just whispering. They were screaming secrets I couldn't quite understand. The box, the mirror, the key, each a symbol in a puzzle that had no clear solution. Then came the dreams. Not the fragmented memories anymore, but clear visions that left me trembling when I woke. I was standing at the edge of a dense forest, moonlight filtering through twisted branches. The trees seemed to lean in, watching, waiting. In the distance, I saw a figure, a silhouette I recognized. My sister. She turned to me, her eyes hollow yet pleading. You must follow, she whispered, her voice like the rustling leaves. Find what was taken. Find the truth. I stepped forward, but the ground gave way beneath me, plunging me into darkness. When I awoke, the sensation of falling lingered cold and heavy. Compelled by the dream, I began searching for clues in my waking life. I dug through old family records, visited the local library, and talked to neighbors who remembered the night my sister disappeared. Everyone's memories were vague, fragmented, or fearful. One name kept surfacing, an old hermit who lived deep in the woods on the outskirts of town. Rumors whisper of his strange rituals, his obsession with spirits and the supernatural. People said he vanished decades ago, but his cabin remained. Driven by desperation, I decided to find the cabin. The forest was thick and unforgiving. Branches clawed at my clothes, and the shadows seemed to move with a will of their own. The deeper I went, the heavier the silence became, an oppressive stillness that smothered even the sound of my footsteps. After hours of wandering, I stumbled upon the cabin. It was decrepit, swallowed by vines and rot. The door hung ajar, creaking with the slightest breeze. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. On a rickety table lay strange artifacts, dried herbs, cracked candles, and worn pages covered in indecipherable symbols. But one object caught my eye, a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was jagged and uneven, but the words were clear. They took her, the child of light. The shadow hunts what the light protects. The message must be found, or the darkness will consume all. My heart pounded. Was this the hidden message my dream spoke of? Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the cabin. The door slammed shut, plunging me into darkness. A voice whispered in my ear, low and terrible. You sought the truth. Now you must pay the price. Part 9. The darkness inside the cabin pressed against me like a living thing. My breath hitched as the whispered words echoed again, colder and closer this time. You sought the truth. Now you must pay the price. I fumbled for my phone, the faint glow cutting through the blackness. The screen lit up a message, not a text, but a series of symbols that twisted and shimmered before settling into words I could read. Face the shadow within. My heart thundered. The shadow wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside me, a parasite feeding on my guilt, my fear, my memories. The journal slipped from my trembling hands, pages fluttering as if caught in a ghostly breeze. I forced myself to focus. The last entry detailed a ritual, one meant to confront the darkness by confronting the self. Face the shadow within, I whispered, the words tasting like ash. I knew what I had to do. I gathered the strange artifacts scattered on the table, dried herbs, cracked candles, and a shard of broken mirror. The ritual felt like a trap, but it was my only chance to break free. Lighting the candles, I arranged the herbs in a circle and held the mirror shard before me. The reflection was distorted, but as I stared deeper, the shadow appeared behind my image, grinning, taunting. Why do you resist? It hissed. You belong to me. No, I said, voice steady despite the fear. I'm taking back control. I raised the shard, cutting through the air. The shadow screamed, a sound like shattering glass mixed with 1,000 whispers. The cabin shook, dust falling from the ceiling, shadows writhing in agony. Then silence. The mirror cracked completely, light flooding the room. I stumbled back, breath ragged but free. I looked down and saw a small, glowing symbol etched into the floor, the same one from my dreams and the journal. It pulsed softly, a beacon of hope. Outside, dawn was breaking. I stepped out of the cabin, the forest feeling lighter, almost alive with renewed energy. The oppressive weight was lifting, but I knew this wasn't the end. The hidden message in my dream had led me here, but the true journey was just beginning. I vowed to uncover every secret, every shadow that haunted my past, and protect the light my sister had carried all along. Because some messages aren't just hidden in dreams. They're hidden in the spaces between, waiting for the brave to find them. Part 10. The forest around me seemed to breathe with a life of its own as the first rays of sunlight pierced through the canopy. The weight that had long hung over me began to lift, but a new sense of urgency settled in my chest. The hidden message in my dream had led me to the cabin, to the ritual, and to a confrontation I never expected. Yet, I knew the journey wasn't over. It was only beginning. Back in town, I began piecing together the final fragments of the mystery. The symbol etched in the cabin's floor appeared again in old photographs and letters tucked away in my family's attic. It was a mark of protection, but one that came with a price. My sister had been part of something ancient, something neither fully light nor darkness. She had carried the burden to shield us all. The shadows that haunted me were echoes of a battle I had only just glimpsed, a war fought in dreams and forgotten memories. Each night, the dreams returned, but they no longer terrified me. Instead, they guided me, whispering warnings, revealing truths, and showing me paths I had to take. I learned to listen, to follow the threads woven through my mind. One night, as I lay awake, the phone buzzed again. This time, a new message appeared. You are ready. I didn't know what awaited me, but I was no longer afraid. The darkness had been part of me, but it didn't control me anymore. Armed with the knowledge and the hidden message from my dreams, I step forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever shadows lurk beyond the veil. Because sometimes the scariest nightmares lead us to the greatest truths, and the light we seek can only be found by walking through the darkness.